After giving a slight bow, the man responded respectfully, "I have been following them the entire day. But they have not done anything else other than just running a store. It doesn't seem like they are going to do anything soon." Sylvia blinked her eyes as she looked at the man in front of her. It was clear that she could not believe what this man had just said. "Are you trying to mess around with me? Do you think that I have the time to continue joking at the moment like this? You're trying to tell me that they were just running a store?" Sylvia asked irritatedly as she looked at the man in front of her. This was yet another subordinate that she possessed. He was already at the 10th star of the ordinary human level. This was just a secret force that she had created, depending on her own ability to acquire resources for them. And of course, since they were being kept as a secret, there was nobody other than herself that knew about their existence. So, this time, she had sent this guy over to go and look for information about Jack and his group. She of course held a grudge against Jack because he was the reason why the image that she had built for a very long time in front of her subordinates in the Panthers organization had been destroyed. So, although she was sure that she was not capable of dealing with Jack, at least now, but she was sure that she was capable of making their lives hard. So, she wanted to get the information about what they were going to do for the entire day. And after that, she was going to make plans on what she was going to do next. But the information that she had received was completely different from what she had expected. They were actually running a store. A superhuman running a store inside a small stronghold. That was something that never went through her mind at all. Yes. They bought a small store in Yakisha Street near the outskirts of the stronghold. The guy wearing a black mask on his face replied. He felt his body trembling when Sylvia subconsciously revealed the aura of a superhuman. He might just be a single level away from being a superhuman. But still, in front of a superhuman, he was nothing but just an ant. And that was just in front of a superhuman at the first stage, not to mention Sylvia, who was currently at the second stage. Sylvia realized that she had released the aura, suppressing the guy in front of her. So, reluctantly, she retrieved the aura, making the guy to stop shaking. After that, she began contemplating about the information. From what you knew, this guy was completely loyal to her. So, not even a single day had he given her any false information, and neither had she found any evidence or suspicions that he was planning to betray her. Added to the expression that was on his face, it was clear that he was not lying. But, Sylvia could not understand the reason why Jack of all people was going to start a small store. In the group of 4, there were actually 2 superhumans. Do you perhaps think that this was just a facade that they are trying to put on? I don't believe that people with their capabilities are going to do something like running a store, tending to only ordinary humans. Sylvia questioned as she looked at the man in front of her. From the way that they were handling things, they were serious about it. Moreover, it seems that they are experienced when it comes to business. The guy replied once again. Sylvia's frown deepened. She was finding the situation more absurd. She thought for a moment when she finally thought of something. She looked at the guy with some light in her eyes that she asked, "What kind of store are they running? Is it big? Have they just opened it today? Or has it been previously existing inside our stronghold?" The guy was immediately surprised by Sylvia's questions. Still, he managed to compose himself and reply, "Actually, the store that they are running is located in Yakisha Street. That street is amongst the poorest within the entire stronghold. As for the store that they are running, it actually belongs to another person. It is just that they rented it and everything inside was bought by them." Sylvia was left speechless after hearing that. She had been expecting that a person of Jack's caliber was going to start a big store. After all, it was not difficult for a superhuman to be able to acquire resources. That implied that, if Jack had decided that he was going to run a store, then, it had to be something big. It might actually end up being another organization that was being set up by Jack. That was the reason why, despite hearing the word Yakisha Street in the time that this guy said it, she had thought that perhaps it existed there, but she had never paid attention to it. But in the end, it stands out that he was just starting. Moreover, even the store that he was using to sell the products was not his, rather, he had rented it. It seems that he doesn't seem to be intent in staying here permanently. But that is also good. I don't like someone like him continuously staying here when he can cause trouble for me," Sylvia stated. It was only for a moment when she suddenly realized that she had said this in front of her subordinate. She came back to her senses and waved at the guy, informing him to leave. Only after he had left, she finally let out a breath of relief. "I will have to make sure that this guy pays for what he did. Now, I'm losing my composure every now and again, something that has not been happening recently." Sylvia mused to herself as killing intent flashed in her eyes. But before that, I will have to make sure that I keep an eye on every move that they make. And the moment that I get a chance, I'm going to make sure that he pays for what he did to me. How can he make me lose so much face in front of my subordinates? Humph. Just you wait, Sylvia thought to herself viciously. Ever since the moment that he had been throwing a tantrum in front of Jack's group, she had retreated into this mansion. This was where she really resided in case she wanted to be free from the organization for a moment. Every time that she was here, she felt that her mind was at peace. So, she retreated here, thinking that it was going to be the same. But, it turned out that the appearance of Jack's group had changed everything. Now, every now and again, she was forced to think about Jack and his mother. At the end of the day, they were the only ones that could help her, but, with the disappearance of Anne, the only hope that he could have was Jack, who might be capable of helping her in finding Anne. Since her mind was not settled, she was no longer capable of thinking of any idea that she was going to use. In the end, she could only send a subordinate in order to go and look for information about Jack and his group. She could only find an idea after she found information about the activities that Jack and his group were carrying out. But in the end, the information that she had received was completely useless. There was nothing that she couldn't do about it. She just hoped that it was not going to take long for her to be able to acquire the information that she wanted. Back to Jack, he and his group had made sales worth 4,670 star coins. All of these were collected by Samantha. He on the other hand had received the income multiplied by 100 times. That implied that, currently, Jack possessed 462,330 star coins. But, it was just that. Unlike previous times where the money was immediately deposited into his account, this time, he was required to claim it. The reason for that was, until now, Jack had not registered into the stronghold. So, there was no information about him, and he did not possess any account that could handle the star coins. Only by becoming a member of the stronghold domain, and registering with the main stronghold membership service, could he be capable of accessing the star coins. After all, the stock coins were not physical, rather, they were virtual. So, they could only be transferred from a person to another online, and could not be withdrawn. Samantha, do you know where I can register for an account of the stronghold? Jack asked after the group finally took their seats. Celine had already gone ahead to prepare their meals. She had already launched the cooking, and, currently, she was not that far off from the current level that Jack was in. It would not take a long time for her to be able to catch up with him, and even pass him because Jack was no longer practicing cooking. This question caught Samantha completely off guard. She had not been expecting such a question from Jack. Wasn't he from the stronghold? Why was it that he was asking for a place where he could register as a member of the stronghold? Although she was confused, she still went ahead and replied, "Actually, there is another organization that is within this stronghold. It is just that. This organization deals with those people that are not affiliated to any organization, and they do not get involved in the matters concerning the entire stronghold. That is where a person can register themselves." It was only after she had responded that she finally realized something. It had to be that Jack wanted to register Denali and Samantha. Otherwise, why would he be asking, right? The following day, Jack decided that he was not going to open the store first. So, the first thing that they were going to do on that day was to register as members of the Stronghold domain. It was only after they had registered as members of the Stronghold domain that they were going to be able to access the account that was going to deal with the star coins. That way, Jack would be able to receive the amount that he had accumulated through the system by now. To go there, Jack drove the vehicle that he was given by the system. Of course, it attracted a lot of attention because it was different as compared to the vehicles that were found inside the stronghold. But still, nobody cared much about it. Perhaps there was someone with a different taste or something. After about half an hour of driving, they finally arrived in front of a building. This building possessed over a total of 10 floors. It occupied a large space of about 5,000 square meters. This was the location of the force that was used to control the small strongholds. Although it was used to control the small strongholds, it was actually not possessing much influence here. The ones that were really controlling this area were the big organizations that were present inside the stronghold. Currently, there were not that many people present here. Anyway, it was not as if this force that was somehow related to the big strongholds possessed a lot of influence inside the stronghold. So, a lot of people did not like coming over here, rather, they would always go to the organizations that were present inside the stronghold. This force was only used by those that did not belong to any organization within the stronghold. As for how that happened, during battles, people would always die. So, their families that remained inside the stronghold would not have anybody to depend on. Still, since they were already considered as members of the stronghold, they were not chased out of the stronghold. Rather, they were left there to depend on themselves. And if there was a family member that was capable enough, they would be able to join an organization to get nurtured and get stronger. In the stronghold domain, all that mattered was that a person possessed enough strength. With enough strength, it was definitely not a problem to be able to do as one pleased. Even wealth was not going to be a problem, as they could just go ahead and snatch it away from their enemies. After Jack's group arrived, they were welcomed by staff members that were here. They were a little surprised that there was actually such a huge group of people that had come over. Of course, they did not know what reason brought them over, but still, it was quite difficult to find that there was a huge group consisting of 4 people coming over at the same time. Since they mostly dealt with the people that did not belong to any organization, it was quite difficult to find them banded together. Additionally, it was not that easy to start an organization inside the stronghold. A person still required the approval of the people from the big strongholds. "Please come in. What would you like assistance with?" a young lady with short green hair questioned with a polite smile on her face. Of course, the smile was just polite, but that did not imply that she was having any good impression of the people that had come over. She herself belonged to an organization, and she was irritated at the fact that she was sent over here to come and take care of matters concerning the people that did not belong to any organization. After all, she was wasting her own time here, rather than going back and training. If these people had decided to join an organization, then what was the need for her to be here? Had it not been that it was a duty that she had been assigned with, she would have definitely not wanted to come over. "We would like to register as members of the stronghold domain," Samantha responded. The lady's brows rose a little with surprise. She had not expected that there was a group that had yet to be registered as members of the stronghold domain. Most of the time, when people came over, they usually came over to purchase something or to receive some certain information about something. As for registration, the children that were born inside the stronghold were always registered at the age of 5. So, to find a person who had already reached 20 years old and above coming over to register, that was mainly if that person was not from the stronghold domain. But most of the people that did not belong to the stronghold domain wanted to register usually belonged to a certain organization. So, there was no need for them to come here to register. Rather, they were going to use the facilities of the organization that they belonged to in order to register. Still, the lady was quite a professional. So, she reacted and said, "Please fill in with your information." Immediately after she said that, she handed over 4 forms so that Jack and his group could fill them. Still, Samantha went ahead and shook her head and said, "I'm already registered. These 3 are the ones that are not yet registered." The lady did not find this strange at all. So, she simply shrugged her shoulders before taking back one of the forms. "I think you should take a look at." Jack took the form that he was given, before he began filling in the personal details. The first one required his name, his age, his signature, where he came from and so on. After they were done with filling the forms, they handed them over to the lady. She looked at them scrutinizingly before she said, "I hope that all the information that you have written inside here is true. Otherwise, you're going to be punished for lying." At the same time as she spoke, she released an aura of a 6-star ordinary human. The moment that she did that, she attracted strange gazes from Jack's group. It seemed that the lady was trying to intimidate them, but, with the current strength that she possessed, if she came to the group, she was definitely going to be the weakest. Currently, even Samantha, who was the weakest, was an 8-star ordinary human. When the lady saw that the group was not reacting, she was a little surprised. But still, she went ahead and stood up from behind the desk. Then, she waved at Jack's group and said, "Follow me. We have to test the level of strength that you currently possess. Actually, there's no need for that. You can just give us the user ID and the account for the star coins. That should be enough." Jack waved his hand in response. The lady paused her movement and looked at Jack with a threatening gaze. Then, she said as she looked straight into his eyes, "This is something that must be done. Unless you don't want to get your user ID, you can decide not to follow the procedures that are required to be followed. And if you do that, you will have to leave the stronghold." Jack, on the other hand, felt a little helpless. After all, he had not suggested that simply because he was arrogant or something. It was just that, currently, with the strength that they possessed, it was definitely going to be a little troublesome. Samantha had already informed him that most of the people that came over to register were at the second star of the ordinary human or so. So, what was going to be the reaction after the lady realized that there were actually two superhumans here? Additionally, Jack was not intending to attract a lot of attention towards them as of now. He still needed to gain a foothold, and that was something that he was planning to do using the stores. But looking at the expression that was on the face of the lady, it was clear that she was not intending to back out. So, Jack decided that there was no harm in going to try the test. He was already informed about the testing by Samantha, but he didn't know about the result that was going to come. After all, until now, he had not utilized any resource that came from the stronghold to be able to reach the current level that he was in. He wondered if that machine that was used to measure the power level of a person was going to be capable of doing that. After seeing that Jack did not have any objections, the lady snorted before turning around and led the way again. Jack's group was led deep into the building, before they took an elevator to the second floor. On arriving there, Jack found that this place was not that different from the testing area that was located in the mercenaries' land. It was just that, the level of equipment that was present here was kind of at a higher level as compared to those that were found in the testing area at the entrance of the stronghold domain. After they arrived here, they realized that there was a small number of people as well. It seemed that this building was almost empty, and it was only occupied by a small number of people, contrasting to the size of the building. The lady let them in front of a machine like that was used inside the hospital for CT scan. Well, although they looked almost the same, that did not imply that the machine was actually used for CT scanning. The one that was present close to that machine was a young man wearing spectacles. He had short black hair that was well kempt. Apart from that, he was also wearing a black suit, a contrasting different to the people that were found inside the stronghold. After he saw them, he did not speak much. Rather, he asked, "Who is going first?" After he saw them, he did not speak much. Rather, he asked, "Who is going first?" Without hesitation, Denali took a step forward. It was clear that she wanted to take the test first. It was not that she did not want another person to do it, but she knew that it was going to be a little troublesome. After all, both Jack and Celine were superhumans. So, if they were tested first, it was definitely going to cause a commotion inside here. The number of superhumans present inside this stronghold could be easily counted in one hand. That implied that, with every appearance of a superhuman, it was definitely going to attract a lot of attention. Currently, although the Panthers organization was the one that was holding a high position, it only possessed a single superhuman. So, the appearance of another superhuman was definitely going to make everything change. So, it depended on which organization that superhuman had come from. But, what if that superhuman was not affiliated to any organization? Perhaps the other organizations might think that this new superhuman was going to try and create his own organization. And for that reason, it was going to be another complicated task, with the addition of another power that was going to try and fight for supremacy of the entire stronghold. That was just the appearance of a single superhuman. But what kind of impact was that appearance of two superhumans going to mean? Additionally, the two of them were actually together, and not just any kind of cooperation. Rather, the two of them were engaged, soon to be couples. When Denali took a step forward, nobody had any objection about that. Anyway, to the young man and the young lady that were present, it was not as if there was going to be any difference with who was going to start the test. Denali went ahead and lied down on the machine. Immediately after that, the young man placed something on top of her head. Then, he pressed a series of buttons on the machine, before Denali was taken into the machine. A bright red scanned her body several times, before finally stopping. At the same time, everyone's gaze was focused on a screen next to the machine that was going to display the current power level of Denali. Of course, neither the young man nor the young lady cared much about the power level that Denali possessed. Since this group was coming over to register right now, that implied that they were not that strong. Additionally, all of them were quite young. It seemed that they were in their early 20s. Tut, tut, tut. Suddenly, a sound came from the machine. At the same time, the display screen showed a series of stars. It began at a single star, then it progressed to 2, 3, 4, and the number kept on rising. When the two young people that were in charge of this area saw this, their eyes suddenly squinted. They could not believe that Denali was actually this strong. The higher the number of stars appeared on the screen, the wider their eyes widened. Just how strong was this lady? Additionally, how come she was this strong? And she was only registering as a member of the stronghold domain now? That did not make any sense to them.
Finally, the series of stars finally stopped at the ninth star. Just looking at the 9 stars that were shining brightly on the screen made the pupils of the two tremble. That was especially so for the lady who had led them here. After all, it was not long ago that she had been trying to intermediate them with her 6th-star ordinary human aura.
From the looks of it, she was just a clown in front of this group. This lady alone was capable of dealing with her several times over. And the lady had already seen it. It seemed that Denali had respect for the two youngsters. So, just how strong were they? Or, did they belong to a certain influential background? The mind of the young lady became a little chaotic. Even the young man who had been quite indifferent all this while was stunned, and he did not react for a moment. It was only after he was reminded by Samantha that he went ahead and pressed another series of buttons with his hands shaking a little. He was a little intimidated by this group, considering that they were quite strong. He himself was just at the 7th star of the ordinary human. But he was not a person who liked fighting. He was an introvert, and had it not been that he had been forced to train, then he would have been enjoying himself while doing some research here and there. For that reason, he did not possess that much of combat capabilities despite his high level of strength. After Denali was taken out from the machine, she stood up and went and stood behind Jack and Celine. That clearly showcased that she was at a lower level as compared to the two. I think you should take a look at. Jack was just about to take a step forward when he was prevented by Celine. Although she was a superhuman, she was at the 1st stage. Jack on the other hand was at the 2nd stage. So, she believed that if Jack took the test now, he was definitely going to cause a huge commotion as compared to her. Jack allowed for Celine to go ahead and take the test. And just like Denali had done, she laid on the machine, before the guy pressed a series of buttons. The machine was activated and Celine was taken inside. A bright red light began scanning her body for a few seconds before finally dimming down. At the same time, beeping sounds came from the machine as the display screen began displaying a series of stars. Just like how it had been for Denali, it began at the 1st star, before continuing to the 10th star. In the moment that it arrived here, the expressions of the two that were observing all of this had already shifted. Their faces had already paled, and what was clear in their eyes. After all, although this territory was a branch from the big strongholds, it actually did not possess even a single superhuman. The strongest person that was present inside here was at the 10th star. The appearance of a person who had noted been affiliated with any organization, and that person's strength was at the 10th star of the ordinary human was something that frightened them. After all, they did not know how it was possible for this person to be able to reach this level without acquiring the resources that the majority of the organizations possessed. Currently, they were already having some suspicions about this group. Could it be a group of spies that have been sent over? After all, why was it that they wanted to skip the test? This was the reason. They were too overpowered for such a small stronghold at their age. But just as the two of them thought that it was over, another change suddenly occurred. The 10 stars that were present on the screen suddenly began merging, and in the next moment, they formed a single star. After that, that single star converted and formed a single gene structure. The color of the gene that had appeared was blue, but there was a strand of gold that was surrounding the gene. Although it was not that intense, it could not be hidden from a person as long as they looked at it. It was too eye-catching. The bodies of the two suddenly began trembling. This time, this was completely out of their own expectations and dreams. The person that had appeared, she looked young, but she had already reached the superhuman level. Currently, they did not know how to react to this matter anymore. After all, even if they decided to call the leader of the force that was in charge of the humans that did not affiliate themselves with any organization, there was nothing that that person was going to do. After all, in front of a superhuman, what could an ordinary human do? Is that a special ability that she possesses? The young lady stammered as she pointed at the screen. She could not believe this. After all, this was the first time that she was seeing a person that possessed a special ability. She was not the only one who was reacting such a way because, even the young man was also having the same expression on his face. There was fewer shock and disbelief as well as fear. When Jack saw that the two seemed to be stunned, he shook his head. It turned out that the appearance of a superhuman was not that much impactful. Rather, the thing that caused the highest impact was the presence of the special ability. Well, I guess this is to be expected. In such a small stronghold, there is nobody that possesses a special ability. And if one appears, they are always snatched by the people from the big strongholds. Jack shook his head as he took a step forward. It was also during this moment that the young man suddenly reacted. He was wondering what Jack was planning to do, even wanting to stop him, but remembering that Jack had not tested yet, he held himself back. After all, what if Jack was yet another superhuman? Jack did not do anything else other than pressing a series of buttons on the machine. Since he had already observed during the time that the young man was pressing the buttons when Denali was being tested, he had already mastered this combination of buttons that was supposed to be pressed. After he had finished pressing the buttons, Celine was taken out of the machine. After that, Jack laid onto the machine, so that he could complete his testing as soon as possible. They needed to go back and open the store. "Hey, do you want me to continue staying here or are we going to continue with the testing?" Jack asked as he looked at the young man. "Oh." The young man finally reacted and went ahead and pressed a series of buttons. This time, his hands were trembling, even to the extent that a person could see it from a distance. After a certain combination was pressed, Jack was taken into the machine. A red light shot out of the machine before it began scanning Jack's body. After a certain combination was pressed, Jack was taken into the machine. A red light shot out of the machine before it began scanning Jack's body. After a few seconds, the blue light family retreated. At the same time, the display screen suddenly began showing the numbers. As always, it began by showing a single star, before they began increasing drastically. The two people had already gotten used to this, but they could not help but gulp when they realized that the number of stars had already reached 10. They began wondering about the background of this group. After all, the two of them were strong enough to be able to deal with those strong people that belonged to this force. So, since they were young, did that not imply that there were even stronger people behind them? Just as they thought that this was going to be the end, the 10 stars began fusing together, before finally forming a single star. After that, the single star transformed into a gene structure. It was just that, completely unlike the one that had been formed after Celine had been tested by the machine. The one that had been formed when Jack was tested consisted of a myriad of colors. There was gold, there was green, there was blue, purple, orange, indigo, white, red and finally, silver. The moment that the two people saw the color that was possessed by the gene, they could not help but swallow hard. They themselves did not understand what the colors implied. But still, they knew that the presence of a single color that contrasted with the blue one implied that a person that was being tested possessed a special ability. But, what were they going to judge the situation? Generally, the color of the gene that was always shown on the screen was blue in color. But, now, the blue was not the dominant one, but instead, it was proportionally divided with the other colors, each and every one of them possessing the same size. In short, there was no color that was dominant amongst all 9 colors. All of them were proportionally to each other, as if there was a balance that existed between them. Even Samantha was surprised. Of course, she too had already been informed about the presence of a special ability. It was just that, she had never expected that she was going to see something like this. But she did not panic. She had already realized that Jack was a person that was a special. After all, he was capable of making Celine become a superhuman just after he had said it. There was no training that occurred. There was no injection that Celine received, but still, she managed to become a superhuman inside a car. Just as the two that was supposed to be taking care of the test were completely stunned not knowing what to do, Celine sighed. It seemed that Jack had attracted even more attention than she had expected. Of course, she had not expected that she herself was going to attract that much attention, but still, she did not expect that Jack was going to be that much attention-grabbing. She too had already been informed about the results of the test and what to expect. Just then, another change appeared on the display screen. The single gene structure that was shown suddenly began splitting, and in no time, another 9-colored gene was formed. When that happened, the two that had already been dumbfounded by the results were immediately petrified. They possessed a lot of knowledge about the current structure of the stronghold. Until now, the information that they possessed was that the strongest person within the entire stronghold was only at the first stage of superhuman level. But now, another person had appeared, and this person was currently at the second stage of the superhuman level. This was definitely going to cause a commotion the moment that it was released. You guys better not try going around giving away the information about what has happened here. It is going to cause a riot within the stronghold, and that is not something that people want to experience at the moment. Samantha stated as she looked at the two. It was only after Samantha began talking to them that the two finally came back to their senses. Of course, they wanted her to retort to what Samantha had said. But, it was not just that the group that she had come over with was stronger than they were, even stronger than the leader of the force, but they did not know the level that Samantha was in. Not willing to provoke this group, the two had no choice but to swallow down what they were just about to say. Anyway, what Samantha had said, it was true. That was going to be a large commotion that was going to be caused if this information managed to reach the ears of the leaders of the different organizations. Of course, there was not going to be even a single person that was going to easily welcome another superhuman into this territory. That was of course especially so for the Panthers organization that was more likely to take over the position of the supreme organization within the stronghold. But still, they did not know what kind of origin Jack's group came from. They did not know if they came over with ill intentions or not. So, although they were not going to release the information to the organizations present within the stronghold, that did not imply that they were not going to inform their superiors. The young man went ahead and pressed another series of buttons, before Jack was taken out of the machine. Even he himself was a little dumbfounded after looking at the results of the test. He was not surprised by the fact that he was at the second stage of the superhuman level. It was just that, his gene structure was composed of several colors. Until now, he knew that he did not possess any special ability, so, why was it that his gene structure possessed several colors? Deciding not to dwell on the matter for now, Jack looked at the two and asked, "Can we complete the procedures now?" "Yes, we will do that right now." The young lady that had brought to the group overstated. Since the results had already come out, all that she needed to do was to process the information, input it into the computer before the computer generated the user ID. All of this took just about 30 minutes. And with all the procedures out of the way, Jack and his group left. Of course, although Samantha had warned the group not to reveal the information, she knew that the information was going to be leaked anyway. It was not as if humans were going to be easily trusted with information. One might actually be told to keep a secret, ending up telling the person that they trusted that information. Of course, they were going to want them not to tell anybody else, as that was supposed to be a secret. And those that were told were going to do the very same thing, spreading the information in no time. True to the expectations, the two people hurriedly went ahead and informed the leader of the force that was in charge of the unaffiliated members of the stronghold domain. "Are you sure about this information? You know, there are some things that you can joke about, but I hope that you don't go ahead and start joking with me at this point." A man with a bald head, well-trimmed beard, currently putting on a black armor with 10 stars. The armor that he was wearing did not possess any insignia of an organization. The young man that was in charge of the testing took a step forward and said seriously, "I will not dare to lie about information like this. I know how sensitive it is. So, there's no need for me to risk punishment for something that is not going to benefit me at all." The bald-headed man looked at the young man with spectacles with squinted eyes. Of course, he could not believe what he had been told. A group of people had come over to register as members of the stronghold when they themselves had already reached the 9th level of the ordinary human, while even 2 of them becoming superhumans? How was that even possible? This was something that had never happened, and he never believed it that it was going to happen. After all, for them to be able to reach the level that they were currently in, they had to depend on the resources that were only found within the stronghold domain. And it was a mandatory rule that everyone within the stronghold domain that was above the age of 5 had to be registered as a member of the stronghold domain. So, how was it possible that these 3 had been using the resources from the stronghold domain without getting registered? When the young man realized that this bald-headed guy was not going to believe him, he took out the footage that had been recorded of the testing room. Of course, the testing room was filled with several cameras, just in case there was something that happened during the testing time. The bald-headed guy took the tablet that he was being handed to, and looked at the video that was playing with some interest in his eyes. He could not understand why the 2 were going to play a trick on him, but still, he could not believe the information that they were giving him. What the FCK? The bald head suddenly shot to his feet, just a few moments after he had watched the beginning parts of the clip. Of course, he believed that this clip was not edited after all. It showed everything as it was supposed to be, consisting of the time, date and so on. "This is important. I have to give the information to the headquarters as soon as possible," the man stated agitatedly. "This is important. I have to give the information to the headquarters as soon as possible," the man stated agitatedly. Did you on the other hand nearly rolled their eyes? Of course it is important. Why else will we come over to look for you? This force that was in charge of the people that were unaffiliated with any organization within the stronghold domain did not possess many people. So, when the 2 of them came over to report, since they had stated that they possessed important information, they were not prevented from meeting this person. Although this bald head was not actually the leader of this force, but he was the second in command. So, they believed that he was going to be capable of dealing with this information appropriately. Of course, they had not informed anybody else about this. Although it might be true that this force that dealt with those that were not affiliated with any organization was independent from the organizations within the stronghold domain, there were always some people that had joined this force in order to gain information for their own affiliated organizations. So, the two of them did not risk giving that information to anybody, just in case that person gave away the information to their own strongholds. Of course, if that information managed to reach the people from the big organizations in the big strongholds, then things were going to change. So, it was going to be better if it is going to be dealt with this force alone. If the other organizations were involved in this matter, it was definitely going to evolve into something big. After all, two people at the age of 20 had already reached the superhuman level. How could something like that not attract attention? As far as they could remember, the person who had managed to reach the superhuman level at a younger age was one that was at the age of 25. And, currently, several decades had already gone by. And this person was said to be very strong within the stronghold domain. So, what was going to happen if not just a single person, but two of them that were at the age of 20 had managed to reach the superhuman level? This was of course big news that could be considered good and bad at the same time. It was going to be bad for those that were enemies of the two, but it was going to be good news for those organizations that wanted to rope them in. Okay. The two of you can leave now. I will make sure to deal with this information appropriately. And make sure that you remember that you are not supposed to tell anybody else about this information. Otherwise, if I hear anything that the information has already been leaked, I will be coming for the two of you. The bald head stated as he looked at the two. Yes. Of course, the two of them did not have any intention of revealing the information that they had received. So, after they left, they made sure to forget about the matter, although they knew that it was going to be an impossibility. After the two of them had left, the bald head could no longer hold on. He used his communication device, after connecting it to the inter-stronghold communication system, finally making contact with the person that he wanted to get into contact with. Of course, in the big strongholds, he was a nobody. After all, he had not even reached the superhuman level, so, at his age, he was absolutely trash. But, that did not imply that there was nobody that cared about him. There was someone that always wanted him to give him insider the information in case there was any organization that made a wrong move. After the communication device connected with the inter-stronghold communication system, there was a moment of silence before a heavy voice came through the communication device. "What is it, Matthias?" the owner of the heavy voice questioned. With a respectful expression on his face, Matthias responded, "Sir, there is a problem here. We received a group of 3 that came over to register as members of the stronghold domain. But, it is just that, the results of their tests are out and are completely abnormal." After a moment of silence, the person from the other end of the communication asked, "Why don't you get straight to the point and tell me what is abnormal about the result?" Matthias also realized that it seemed that the other party was impatient, so he went ahead and gave him the detailed information about what he had been informed and seen. Although he had not seen the entire clip, there was no need for him to do that. After all, just after confirming the few pieces of information, he knew that this information had to reach the higher-ups as soon as possible. It's cold, not be delayed. "Are you sure about what you're saying?" the owner of the voice asked, a little doubtful of what he had heard. "Yes. I have personally confirmed it. Currently, I'm intending to send the video clip to you through the private communication line," Matthias responded. "Okay. Do that now. If the information that you have provided is correct, then you have to be ready for a promotion. Perhaps you might be capable of reaching the superhuman level," the owner of the voice stated. Matthias was immediately excited. This was what he had been looking forward to. After all, currently, he could be considered as one of the weakest people that worked for the force. He wanted to get stronger, so that he could be posted in an organization that possessed better resources. This way, he would be able to improve himself easily in the future. After the communication between the two of them was cut, Matthias did not delay to send the clip into his communication device, before transferring it to the other party using the private communication line. The Force Stronghold. This was a stronghold that was located several thousand kilometers away from stronghold number 17. Just like the Devon stronghold, it was also a big stronghold inside the stronghold domain. But it was just that, this stronghold was actually at a level above the Devon stronghold. Unlike the Devon stronghold that composed of several forces, The Force stronghold only possessed a single organization, the Force. Although it might be true that the Devon stronghold was currently controlled by a certain family, they did not possess absolute control of everything. After all, the families and organizations that were found within that stronghold were not easy to be dealt with as they themselves were strong. As long as they banded with each other, they were easily going to be capable of defeating the leading force of that stronghold. Inside one of the big mansions that was located closer to the center of the stronghold, there was a man who was wearing casual clothing. He had a fat body, completely unexpected of a person that was training on a daily basis. Currently, he had just ended the communication with Matthias. So, after waiting for a while, a ping came from the communication device on his wrist. With enthusiasm, he looked at the video that had been sent over. Just after watching for a few seconds, he was pleasantly surprised. Then, he continued to watch until he finally saw something that he had never expected. There was actually a person that possessed a strength gene structure. Even he himself did not know anything about this gene structure. Of course, as a member of a big stronghold, he possessed incredible strength, and more than that, a lot of information about the entire stronghold domain. So, for him to be unable to recognize anything, then, that something had to be profound. With a scheming smile on his face, he decided, this is going to be a huge haul for our organization. But still, I think I can use this chance to repay the favor that I owe the idiot. I'll just give him the information about the girl. As for the boy, I should be the one that will be going after him. I will do this personally. Immediately after he thought of that, he used the inter-stronghold communication system to contact a person from another stronghold. After that, he informed him about the appearance of a person that possessed a special ability, but was not affiliated to any organization. Immediately after that, he sent over a clip that he had made sure to cut the part where Jack was involved. And with that, he finally felt relieved. Since that is now done, I don't think I owe him anything now. If he manages to get her or not, that is not something that concerns me. Anyway, I have already given him the information, together with the location that she is currently in. So, it is up to him on whether he is going to get her or not. Anyway, I have to snatch the boy away before he makes his move. And with that, the fat guy left his mansion, before heading towards the direction of the control center of the Force organization. Jack and his group opened the store that day. They did not realize that just a simple test in order to be able to acquire membership of the stronghold domain was going to cause them a lot of trouble, either now or in the future. Nevertheless, it was not as if Jack was going to care about that. Currently, what he was focused on the most was to receive the star coins from the system. After he got them, he was planning to restock the store that they were currently running. Currently, Jack possessed 462,330 star coins. So, after the registration, Jack was given the communication device that every person inside the stronghold possessed. Of course, the one that he was given was at a higher level considering that there were different levels of communication devices that would be found within the stronghold domain. It was just that, for those normal people that were found inside the stronghold domain, they possessed normal communication devices, just an advanced version like the one that the mercenaries in the city that was located out of the stronghold possessed. As for the ordinary humans, they were given another one that was capable of communicating and several other functions that were linked to the organization that they belonged to. As for those that were not affiliated with any organization, they were also given communication devices that were able to communicate with other people at a long-range distance. It was just that, although they could come and get with people outside of a stronghold, as long as a person entered a stronghold, then, the inter-stronghold communication device would be required. The one that Jack had been given together with Celine was the one that was given to the 10th star ordinary humans. Currently, the communication devices that were used by superhumans were not available inside this stronghold. After all, nobody expected that there was going to be two superhumans that were going to appear out of nowhere. Additionally, the two of them were not affiliated with any force. After getting access to the Star Coins account, Jack immediately retrieved the amount that he had received from the system after the multiplier effect was applied. So, currently, his Star Coins balance was at 462,330 Star Coins. With the amount of money that had been recharged into his account, Jack asked for Samantha to come over. Curious, Samantha headed to where Jack was. "Do you know where we can get more items and products that we can use to restock the store?" Jack asked. Currently, the store did not possess anything that was much attractive to the high-level members of the stronghold. So, it was going to be better if they were going to be able to purchase them. That way, he was going to be capable of earning even more. It was true that there were restrictions that were present with the income multiply effect. He could not sell what he had gotten from the system and expect that the multiplier effect was going to occur. Instead, he was planning on using the star coins that he had gotten from the system to purchase more items that were going to be sold. In that way, he was not going to lack the effect of the 100 times income multiplier. Samantha was a little surprised. Although she did not understand the reason why they had to get a store, she still went ahead and got one. Now, just a single day had gone by, and they had not sold many things in the store. So, the store was currently almost the way that it was before they took it over. But Jack was already thinking of restocking. It was not a bad idea, but it was just that the current amount of star coins that they possessed was not enough to be able to make much of an impact on the items present inside the store. Yes, there is a place that we can acquire the resources. It should not be a problem for me to be able to get a few high-level items. It is just that we don't have that much money right now, Samantha stated embarrassedly. At the end of the day, she was a guardian before she joined Jack. For that reason, for her to possess such a small number of star coins was actually embarrassing for a person of her position. The majority of the guardians within the stronghold all tried as much as possible to gain as many benefits as they could. So, almost all the guardians present within the stronghold possessed a huge amount of wealth. It was just that Samantha on the other hand was not too much focused on the matters of possessing much wealth. Rather, she was willing to be free, not to think much about things that did not concern her. She herself was gaining resources from the butterfly organization. For that reason, she did not see the need for her to continue trying to look for resources when all of them were provided inside the organization. I'm going to transfer to you 460,000 star coins. I hope you can use them to restock the store, Jack stated. Immediately after that, he used his communication device to transfer the amount into Samantha's account. Ding! Before Samantha could understand what was going on, she suddenly heard a notification sound coming from her communication device. And when she looked at it, she found a message informing her that there was a debit of 460,000 star coins. Her eyes widened in disbelief. This amount of money that she had received at this time was way above the amount that she had saved previously. So, she was a little excited after seeing the large number of star coins. It was just that she could not understand how it was possible for Jack to possess so many star coins. Additionally, if he possessed such a large number of star coins, why was it that he had asked for star coins from her? Could it be that he had only received the star coins from his family after he had registered as a member of the stronghold? Samantha could not help but start making assumptions. Nevertheless, she was excited. She looked at Jack and said, "I'll be making the arrangements right now." Immediately after that, she rushed out of the store, not bothering the kind of gazes that she was receiving from Denali and Celine. Jack on the other hand, who was left speechless. He had not expected that Samantha was like this. But, he could not understand why with such a character, she was so broke. After all, the 269,000 star coins that she possessed was nothing in front of a guardian. Just taking over a small store like the one that they were currently in had cost them a lot. So, one could already imagine the value of the money that Samantha possessed. What Jack did not know was that, even the amount of money that Samantha possessed was not something that she had worked to gain, rather, it was something that was left after she had expended the money that she was given inside the organization. After Samantha left, Celine approached Jack and asked curiously, "Where did you get that large amount of money that you have just transferred to Samantha?" Celine was a superhuman. So, although she was a distance away from the two, since Jack was not making any effort to conceal the conversation between the two of them, she had heard completely what they were speaking about. "Oh, that is just a small amount of money that I made," Jack responded. Of course, he was not going to tell Celine that he had gotten the money through the system. He was not willing to risk the exposure of the system with the current knowledge that he possessed of the stronghold domain. Currently, he was not sure if there was a person that was capable of reading memories of a person. Although it was true that currently, Celine was protected by the system from mind control. Mind reading was completely different from mind control. Celine blinked eyes as she looked at Jack. Jack had answered the question ambiguously, not giving her a definite response. Still, she could tell that Jack was not willing to talk about it. Although she trusted Jack, she could not help but feel a little frustrated. After all, until now, Jack was still keeping some secrets from her. Although she did not mind, but it was somehow getting into her head. In the end, Celine could only let out a sigh, before she went and sat beside Jack. Then, she went ahead and leaned her head on his shoulder, before closing her eyes. It was not like she was tired, but she just liked the feeling of relaxing next to the person that she loved. Jack could see the trace of disappointment within Celine's eyes. But still, there was nothing that he could do about it. The matter concerning the system was something that was sensitive. Even he himself did not understand the origin of the system, but he knew that the system was something that came from outside of the blue planet. It was mysterious, and it possessed incredible abilities that were way beyond the understanding of science. Although it might be true that the system was currently affecting Celine as well, but still, he was not willing to expose her directly to it. He wanted to make sure that in case there was anything that went wrong, then, he was the one who was going to handle it, making sure that Celine was safe. At the same time as this was happening, several kilometers away from Devon's stronghold, Derek and his guardian had finally arrived in front of yet another stronghold. It was just that, this stronghold that they had arrived in was not named. That implied that, it was at a lower level. It was also during this moment that Derek finally woke up. The old man had been making sure that Derek would not wake up before they arrived here and start causing trouble. Derek on the other hand felt his mind a little fuzzy. He felt that the events that had happened not long ago were like a dream but at the same time as a reality. He tried to comprehend what was going on when after a few seconds, he finally came back to his senses. Looking at the old man who was looking at him while he lay on the ground, Derek was furious. He jumped to his feet and pointed at the old man as he questioned, "What the FCK was that? Are you trying to rebel?" Looking at the old man who was looking at him while he lay on the ground, Derek was furious. He jumped to his feet and pointed at the old man as he questioned, "What the FCK was that? Are you trying to rebel?" Derek was furious. He was a person who was currently at the 10th star of the ordinary human level. So, he was still able to remember what had happened. Although he was not given a chance of reacting before he was knocked unconscious, he was still able to remember vividly what had happened. At that time, he was planning to deal with Alicia first. And after that, he was going to deal with Jack, before getting his hands on Celine. But, everything went wrong with the intervention of the old man. He prevented him from doing what he wanted, something that infuriated him. Moreover, he was knocked unconscious, something that had never happened before. The old man on the other hand did not respond to the furious glare that he was receiving from Derek. He had no choice but to do what he did. After all, what Derek was trying to do was something that was going to cause him trouble. Where did he think he was? He was outside Devon's stronghold. That was Alicia's home ground. So, if Derek tried to do something, then, he was going to be dealt with efficiently. Additionally, it was not as if Alicia's family was weak. Left with no choice, the old man decided to knock Derek out. After that, he took him away from that area. Since they did not have any means of transportation, he had no choice but to go on foot. Because he was sure that Derek was going to cause a lot of trouble if he woke up, he made sure to keep Derek unconscious. It was only after they arrived here that he finally allowed Derek to wake up. And true to his expectations, looking at the fuming Derek, he was sure that he had done the right thing. Although currently, Derek was blaming him, the old man was not afraid. In any case, what he had done had already saved Derek. If he did what was on his mind back then, the relationship between Alicia's family and his family was going to be ruined. And, what was going to follow next was enmity between the two. As for him and Alicia getting together, that was not something that was going to happen. When Derek realized that the old man did not have the intention of responding, the killing intent in his heart increased. Had it not been for the fact that the old man was actually at the superhuman level, then, Derek would have surely charged forward and beaten him up. How dare this old man who was just a servant in his family ruin his plan? And although he could not currently deal with the old man, Derek decided that he was going to deal with him after they went back home. The old man saw that Derek was finally calming down, although he was still angry at him after about 20 minutes. So, he pointed behind Derek who had not looked behind him ever since he had woken up and said, "We can get a means of transport from here." Derek frowned. Immediately after that, he turned around and realized that behind him, there were huge walls. This implied that currently they were outside a certain stronghold. It was just that, Derek could not recognize this stronghold. For a person like him, all he cared about was the named strongholds. As for the other strongholds that were named in terms of numbers, those were the ones that he did not pay much attention to. But still, he could see that this stronghold was quite big as compared to stronghold number 17. According to his knowledge, a stronghold like this one definitely possessed a large number of superhumans, as compared to stronghold number 17. Derek decided to put away his dissatisfaction for the moment. The thing that he wanted to do the most was to make sure that he got into contact with Celine. After that, he was going to deal with Jack, before making sure that he took Celine with him. Of course, he was already having another plan in his mind. He was not going to depend on the old man, because it seemed that ever since they had come into contact with Celine, the old man was too focused in ruining his plans. The first one was during the time that they had interacted with Celine, where she had blasted him into the wall. The second time was when they were about to enter the stronghold domain, where the old man prevented him from attacking Jack. Then, it was at the Devon stronghold where he was planning to do something to Alicia when the old man intervened, knocking him unconscious. And, he was sure that if he made a move on Celine, the old man was going to intervene once again. That was something that he was not looking forward to. So, using the communication device that he was having, he sent a message secretly. He had informed someone to send someone over. Of course, although he was sending the information to the stronghold that he belonged to, he did not require the inter-stronghold communication device to be able to make sure that the information reached the person that he was sending the message to. Since his user ID was registered inside that stronghold, he was capable of sending the messages, just like how Samantha was capable of communicating with a person inside the Butterfly organization while she was in the normal world. Of course, Derek's actions did not escape the old man's eyes. He was a Stage 3 superhuman, so how was it possible that the actions of a 10-star ordinary human was capable of escaping his sight? It was just that, there was nothing that he could do but feel a little helpless. It seemed that this young master was so intent in causing trouble for his father. Since he had already sent the message, there was nothing that he could do. Okay then. Let's get going. We'll find something that can get us out of here. While they might not have a ship for such a small stronghold, we should be able to get a good car that will make it easier to move around, Derek stated as he began moving toward the stronghold. He had just taken a few steps when suddenly, his communication device rang. He was a little surprised because he wasn't expecting anyone to contact him at this point. The person he had sent the message to was someone who always followed commands without asking questions. With an irritated expression on his face, Derek looked at his communication device. He was instantly surprised to see that the person contacting him was actually his father. What's wrong? There should be 2 days before the time I was given elapses. Why is father calling me? Derek wondered aloud. Actually, it's the second day you've been unconscious, the old man said carefully. The moment Derek heard those words, he felt his heart nearly erupting. He had been unconscious for 2 days? Did this old man want to waste the time he had to roam free and enjoy himself? As angry as he was, there was nothing he could do for now but respond to his father's call. Father, Derek said, trying to act calm, but there was a trace of fear in his eyes and his voice briefly wavered. Where are you right now? You're supposed to be back inside the stronghold by now. Why are you still playing outside? A strict and stern voice reached Derek's ears. When he heard that voice, Derek felt his body shivering a little. The person that he admired the most was definitely his father. But, it was also his father that he feared the most. His father was a stern person, and although he always doted on him, but he had his own limits as well. If a time came when Derek went past the limits that his father could tolerate, then, Derek was definitely going to have it difficult. I was planning to come back right now. Something happened in the middle, so, it's going to take us some time before we arrive. Derek stuttered. Humph. What happened? I know that if something happened, then you are the reason why it happened. Anyway, that is not the reason why I called. I want you to go and take care of something for me. The man on the other side of the call stated with a harumph. What is it, father? Derek felt elated after realizing that his father was not intending to pursue the matter. If his father realized what he was planning to do, then, he was definitely toast. I want the two of you to go and bring me a certain girl. She is within stronghold number 17. And let me warn you in advance, don't try to play any tricks on her. Not only is she a superhuman, but she possesses a special ability. If you end up irritating her or angering her, I'm definitely going to cut off your limbs. A task was immediately given to Derek. I want the two of you to go and bring me a certain girl. She is within stronghold number 17. And let me warn you in advance, don't try to play any tricks on her. Not only is she a superhuman, but she possesses a special ability. If you end up irritating her or angering her, I'm definitely going to cut off your limbs. A task was immediately given to Derek. Derek was left speechless for a moment. He could not understand who this lady that he was supposed to bring to his father was. After all, from what his father was saying, she seemed to be so important.
But of course, there was something that he understood. The lady that he was supposed to go over and bring her back to the territory where his family was located was a superhuman, and she possessed a special ability.
Inside the stronghold domain, it was not that the number of special ability holders was low. It was just that, as compared to the population that was within the stronghold domain, the number of special ability holders was less than 5%. So, even Derek himself understood that getting a person with a special ability was something that an organization could be proud of. That was especially so if the person that possessed a special ability was with an ability that was capable of boosting their power, or it was unique, something that could not be replicated. So, it was not a surprise that several organizations and even territories could fight against each other in order to be able to gain a single person with a special ability. After all, if a person who was at the superhuman level possessed a special ability like the one that Celine possessed, then, it was obvious that there was nobody in the same stage as her that could fight against her if they did not possess a special ability as well.
But there was something that got Derek's attention in his father's words. That was, this lady that he was supposed to take was actually present within stronghold number 17. That was the stronghold that he had been in not long ago, and he had even decided that he was going to take Patricia when he came back from the normal world.
But, he had never expected that the information that he had received from Alicia was false. Moreover, Alicia was only trying to use him for her own benefits. And in the end, he failed to get what he wanted, and even fell out with Alicia. Father, but if this lady is a superhuman, doesn't that mean that she belongs to a certain organization? Or can it be that you were nurturing her secretly? Derek asked. Although most of the time he never wanted to think much about what he was doing, simply depending on his background to do what he wanted, that's not imply that he was not someone with brains. So, he understood that it was an impossibility for a person without a background to be able to reach the superhuman level. Additionally, how was it possible that a person with a special ability, capable of reaching the superhuman level was without an organization? How did that person manage to get the resources that she utilized to be able to reach the level that she was in? You don't have to worry much about that. She has just registered as a member of the stronghold domain today. That implies that until now, there is nobody that can claim that she belongs to them. So, as long as we get to her first, then, it is going to be our own benefit, Derek's father replied. Derek remained silent after hearing what his father had said. A person at the superhuman level who had just registered as a member of the stronghold on this very day. How is that even possible? Nevertheless, he trusted his father. There was no way that his father was going to act if the information that he had received was false. But, he was having an inkling that this issue might actually be related to him in one way or another. After all, he had interacted with Celine, and he was not sure in which organizational territory she belonged to. Okay. I'll make sure that we come back with her, and if she tries to resist, since she doesn't belong to any organization, I will make sure that we take her by force. Derek stated, completely forgetting about what his father had said first. After hearing what Derek had said, Derek's father immediately became angry. He was wondering why his son was so idiotic sometimes. He had just said that he was not supposed to harm her, but here he was, claiming that he wanted to take her back by force. Did you not hear what I just said? I say that you better treat her well, making sure that nothing happens to her. If there's something that happens to her, then I'm going to break your legs. Forget about that, I'm going to cut off your legs, Derek's father stated angrily. Derek felt his body shivering after hearing his father's angry voice. He had actually forgotten about what his father had said not long ago. It was a good thing that he was not where his father was currently, otherwise, he really would have been beaten up. I think you should take a look at. As for having his legs cut off, that was not something that his father joked about. But, he knew that his father could do that. With the current level of technology that was within the stronghold domain, it was not a problem for them to be able to regenerate a limb of a person. It was just that, the pain that a person was going to undergo during the time that they would be cutting off their limb would not be something that someone could be proud of. So, Derek, who feared pain, was not willing to take the risk of having his limbs cut off. Yes, father. I'll make sure that I bring her back in one piece. But, what if she refuses to come with us? Derek asked. He had to make sure that he took all the precautions, making sure that he did not anger his father. Just tell Vincent to knock her out. That way, we can avoid dealing any damage to her. She is going to be important to our family in the future. So, try to make sure that she doesn't suffer anything that is going to make her hate our family, Derek's father responded. Vincent was the old man that was protecting Derek all this time. According to Derek's father, He believed that with the current level of strength that Vincent possessed, he was going to be capable of knocking out a stage 1 superhuman. Derek on the other hand was left speechless momentarily. After all, he was wondering what his father was trying to imply here. How was what he had just said different from what he had just suggested? He suggested that if the lady that they were going to pick up refused to come over with them, then they would just take her with force. But his father threatened to cut off his limbs. But wasn't kidnapping the same thing? After all, if they knocked her out, that implied that they wanted to take her away against her own will. That was still the same as using force against her. Of course, Derek only thought of that, but he did not dare to say that in front of his father. So, he simply nodded and said, "I understand, father. I'll make sure that we complete this mission as soon as possible so that we can be back at home. Make sure you remember what I just said. Do not cause any damage on her. If she comes over and she is injured or you have done anything to her, I'm going to make sure that I cut off your limbs. I'm going to send over her image to you." Derek's father responded before ending the communication. Derek waited for a while before a ping came from his communication device. He looked at the communication device, and the information about the lady that he was supposed to take over back to his family was sent by his father. But he had just looked at the information, reading the name, and he was completely stunned. He had not expected that the lady that he was supposed to pick was actually Celine. Additionally, it seemed that she was currently registering as a member of the Stronghold domain. Could it be that he had been thinking too much, thinking that she was someone with a background? But how was it possible? A young superhuman being capable of reaching the superhuman level without resources? That was definitely impossible. Nevertheless, he was excited. After all, he had been thinking that the person that he was supposed to pick was maybe 40 years or above. But it turned out that it was the very same target that he was looking for. He had been planning to start going around into different strongholds in order to look for her whereabouts. Who would have thought that the information about where she was going to be provided to him by his father? Additionally, his eyes suddenly widened with excitement. After all, it seemed that Celine had already caught his father's attention. That would imply that his father was having the intention of having Celine join their family. With excitement in his eyes, he looked at Vincent and said, "Let us get a vehicle and go to stronghold number 17. Father has given me a mission that needs to be completed as soon as possible." Derek had never expected that his luck was going to be this good. Although he was not able to mess with Celine for the moment, but he was going to mess with Patricia while there, before taking Celine with him. As for Celine, he believed that his father was going to accept the marriage between the two of them after Celine joined their family. "Yes, young master," Vincent responded before the two of them began heading into the direction of the stronghold. But in stronghold number 17, Jack and his group did not know that the test that they had taken simply was going to bring them a group of troublemakers. Perhaps Jack would be given the chance of using the fly swatting plan, FSP. Ref. Chap 69. Nevertheless, Jack had decided to focus on making sure that he completed his research on the vehicle that he was given by the system as a reward. On the other hand, Samantha did not take a long time for her to be able to restock the store. It seemed that during the time that she was inside this stronghold, she had formed some connections. Although she did not possess a large number of star coins, it was not difficult for her to be able to get resources of a low level. Such resources were not difficult to get. Only those that were at a high level were the ones that were controlled by the organizations inside the stronghold. So, it was going to be a little difficult to be able to acquire them. Anyway, it was not as if Jack was in need of the high-level resources at the moment. What he really wanted was to be able to acquire star coins. After that, he would be able to acquire higher-level resources. It was then that his plan was going to set in. Sylvia on the other hand had already realized that Jack did not do much. Rather, he was just focused on the store, and sometimes he would be seen looking at the car, as if he was studying something. She could not understand why he would waste his time on a car that was not even at the level of the cars that were present within the stronghold. Nevertheless, she made sure to continue keeping an eye on him. After all, what she really wanted was that, if there was a chance that Jack came over and he possesses information about his mother, then, perhaps he could give her a clue on where to find her. On the first day after the restocking of the store, the sales were not that much. Although it was a little higher than the previous day, but still, they only earned 7,680 star coins. With the multiplier effect, Jack was able to get 768,000 star coins. Previously, Samantha had spent the entire 460,000 star coins that Jack had given her. That was the decision that Jack had made. ensuring that she spent every penny that he had given her in order to restock the store. Currently, Jack's balance was 761,650 star coins. As for the rest, the money that was earned within the store, all of that was kept by Celine. With his balance already closing in on the 7-digit, Jack had decided that it was better if he tried to get the resources that were required in order to be able to forge the armor that he had been given the blueprint. "Samantha, do you perhaps know where we can get a person who can forge an armor for us?" Jack asked in the evening after the store was closed. Samantha was a little surprised. She was wondering why Jack wanted to forge the armor, rather than just purchasing one that was already made. But she thought that he was a superhuman, and inside this stronghold, there was definitely no armor was capable of matching him. Even the armor that Phoebe and Sylvia possessed was something that was produced in the stronghold that was at a high level as compared to stronghold number 17. Currently, there was no expert that was capable of creating an armor that was capable of being used by a superhuman. Yes, there is a group of people that possess the skills of making the armor. It is just that, with their current level of skills, I am afraid that they are not capable of making an armor that is of your level, Samantha responded. Jack thought about it and found that what she had said was reasonable, but he believed that since the armor that he was supposed to make using the blueprint that he was given by the system required resources that were considered as useless within the stronghold domain, then, there was no way that it was going to be capable of being used by a superhuman. His intention was to try out the armor. And at the same time, he was wondering if it was possible to be able to mass-produce the armor, something that was going to be placed within the store for sale. "There's no need for you to worry that much about that. Just take me to that person tomorrow. And perhaps, you can help me in seeing if these materials can be found within the stronghold," Jack stated before handing over the list that he had already written to Samantha. Of course, he was not afraid that Samantha was going to betray him. Anyway, it was not like Samantha knew that these materials were going to be used to forge an armor. And even if she knew, she did not have the blueprint of the armor. And other than that, currently, she was under a contract, something that was preventing her from betraying Jack. If she attempted to do that, she was going to die even before she managed to do it. "I think you should take a look at." "Okay," Samantha said as she looked at the materials in the list. She was a little surprised when she found that the materials inside the list were actually very common. Additionally, they were mostly considered useless, and even sometimes ignored. In reality, it was not that they were that useless. It was just that, there were some materials that were at a higher level than them, so, most of the people liked to using the ones that were at the high level. The materials here are very cheap. Reflection crystal, metallic glass, steel sand ore, absorption fluid. All of these are low-level materials. If I calculate the total cost, it should only cost about 300 star coins, Samantha stated after looking at the list. When Jack heard the price of the items, he could not help but get stunned. After all, according to the system, that was a list containing the materials that were going to be used in order to make an anti-laser armor. So, how come it was so cheap? After all, even to purchase the building that they were currently in, they had to spend more than that. Additionally, even in the store, some of the things that were considered useless to them were actually expensive. Jack could not help but feel a little disappointment within his heart. It turned out that the anti-laser armor that he was supposed to create after entering the stronghold domain was actually this useless? For a moment, Jack had the impulse to cancel the matter. But, in the end, he simply shook his head and said, "Just help me finding those materials. After that, tomorrow the first thing in the morning, we are going to look for the person who is capable of making that armor." Samantha nodded. She knew that Jack possessed some incredible abilities, and she herself had never seen these materials being used to make an armor. Even though Jack had not stated that these materials were going to be used to make an armor, but since he wanted her to get the materials first, then, there had to be some relationship of the materials to the armor. Samantha left, going to do the purchases. The stronghold domain was somewhere that business was run 24/7. Although she could have purchased the materials using her communication device, just like how the normal online shopping was done, but she decided to do this personally. Although the business within the stronghold was done from morning to morning, it was just that, Jack was not ready to let the group do the same thing. It was not as if they were going to run the store for life. That was something that they were just using to be able to get the income. Of course, had it not been that Jack possessed the 100 times income multiplier system, then, he would not have hesitated to use one of the 99 puppets that he had received from the system in order to be able to make them to run the store. Of course, he could have used them right now, but he had already realized that there was someone that was keeping an eye on them. Although he did not care about them, he was not willing to reveal everything about him. After all, they were in a new domain, and he had not yet gained a foothold. So, although he was not sure if these 99 puppets could be improved, but he hoped that he could get something from the system that was going to enable the 99 puppets to continue existing even after the 1-year period was over. The following day, Samantha led the group towards a certain part of the stronghold. It was the western side of the stronghold. And as they were on the way, Samantha began explaining. The western part of the stronghold is where the majority of the organization's businesses are found. There, it is not difficult for us to be able to find a person who can make an armor. Samantha stated. She herself was quite curious about what kind of armor was going to be made from the materials that she had purchased the previous day. The car did not take a long time for it to be able to arrive in the western part of the city. And, this time, Samantha had decided to use the Panthers organization's shop for making equipment. She could have used the one that belonged to the Butterfly organization, but, since she had defected, she was sure that there was some resentment from the people from the Butterfly organization towards her. Welcome to our equipment shop. Here, we provide readily available equipment, and at the same time, we can also make customized equipment. So, which service would you like? A middle-aged lady asked the group with a professional smile the moment that the group arrived at the reception of the building where the factory that was used in making equipment was located. Welcome to our equipment shop. Here, we provide readily available equipment, and at the same time, we can also make customized equipment. So, which service would you like? A middle-aged lady asked the group with a professional smile the moment that the group arrived at the reception of the building where the factory that was used in making equipment was located. I would like someone to create an armor for me, Jack replied. If that is the case, please follow me. I do wonder if you have any specifications on the expert that you would want him to create an armor for you? The lady asked as she moved from behind the desk. Just give me the top expert present, Jack responded. He was new here, so he did not know much about the experts. To him, it did not matter who it was, but as long as they possessed the skills enough to be able to create the armor, then he was willing to give them the job. The lady did not say much. Since she had been given the decision to make, she led Jack's group to the next floor. On this floor, there were several rooms available. Each room on this floor was big, occupying an area of approximately 500*200 meters. The lady led them further into the building, before coming to a stop in front of a door. She went ahead and pressed the communication device that was located at the entrance before saying, "Johnson, you have some guests that need you to make an armor for them." After a few seconds of silence, the voice of a male came from inside the communication device. "Let them in." Immediately after the voice faded, the door of the room slid sideways, opening a path for the group to enter. The lady turned around and looked at Jack's group and said, "You can go in. If you have anything that you would like some assistance with, you can still find me at the reception desk." Jack nodded. After that, the lady turned around and left. As for Jack's group, they entered the room. Inside the room, there were several equipment that were arranged in shelves. All these equipment seemed to be displayed, something that was trying to show off the skills of the person who had created them. Other than that, Jack focused on the door that was at the farthest end of the room. There, the door was open, and through the opening at the door, he could see that there was a middle-aged man who was walking out. He was currently putting on a tight V-neck t-shirt and casual pants. He was someone with a muscular build. When he saw Jack's group, he could not help but frown a little. According to him, Jack's group was nothing more than just a group of brats that might have come over just to waste his time. What the middle-aged lady had not said to Jack's group was that this middle-aged man in front of them was actually one of the best craftsmen of the Panthers organization. Since it was Jack's request that the person that would craft the armor for them to be the best, the lady did just as he had requested. But this guy was definitely not pleased with their presence here. "What kind of armor do you want me to make for you?" Johnson asked. He did not try being polite to Jack and his group. That was just how he was. With the skills that he possessed, it was mostly the people that came over to have their armors crafted by him that would have to be polite with him. Jack was of course not offended. He was not someone who cared about some petty issues like that. So, he looked at Samantha, who nodded and went ahead with the box that she was carrying. After opening it, she showed the materials inside the box to Johnson. And when Johnson saw what was inside the box, he could not help but feel his brows twitch a little. He had been already expecting that this group was just some spoiled brats that had come over in order to waste his time. He had not expected that they were going to go to such a level. bringing to him some materials that were of a very low quality. Did they expect that he was going to use those materials to craft an armor for them? Why was it that they did not go to any craftsman other than him? After all, there were many craftsmen that were present inside this building. And any of them was capable of making the armor. So, why was it that they had to come and look for him, the top craftsman of the Panthers organization? The frown on his face turned into anger after observing the materials that were present inside the box. According to him, he did not believe that these materials could be utilized to make an armor at all. I think you should take a look at. Are you here to make a prank or something? If that is the case, you better leave right now before I get angry. Johnson stated as he looked at Jack's group angrily. He did not know the background of these guys, so he was not willing to make a move unless necessary. Although he was a craftsman, that did not imply that he was with himself. He had received a lot of resources from the Panthers organization, so currently, he was actually a 9-star ordinary human. Of course, if it came to combat power, he was weaker than a normal 9-star ordinary human. Jack on the other hand frowned when he looked at Johnson's expression. Then, he looked at Johnson with a serious expression on his face and said, "I have a blueprint of the armor that I would like you to craft for me. But before you see the blueprint, I would like you to sign a contract that you are not going to expose or use the blueprint any other time." Even though Jack thought that the blueprint that he had been given by the system was not of a high level, he had decided that he was not going to just give to anybody. After all, this could be used as a source of his income. Johnson on the other hand felt his heart nearly bursting from anger. But still, he was a little interested by the mention of the blueprint that Jack had mentioned. He looked at him and asked, "Can I see the blueprint?" "I already said that before you see the blueprint, you will have to send the contract that you are not going to reveal anything about it," Jack stated once again. Johnson on the other hand was of course displeased by what Jack had said. At normal times, he would always meet all those that wanted him to craft an armor for them. He was not a person who always put on airs. But still, he was a person who valued his reputation and face. So, although he could allow just anybody to come over to have his armor crafted, but they would have to bring a challenging task, not just anything that could be done by anybody. But even so, when they came over, even if they brought over a challenging task, they would have to humble themselves in front of him. Additionally, Jack and his group should feel privileged that he was even willing to look at the blueprint that they had brought over. Still, he decided to play along for a little while. If Jack and his group had decided to come over and play a prank on him, then, he was going to make sure that each and every one of them was punished. "Okay. Do you have a contract?" Johnson asked. Jack had of course prepared everything before he came over. So, he simply took out the contract that he had carried over, all the conditions written down. Of course, he was not expecting that everybody that was going to sign the contract was going to be able to make the armor. He believed that some things from the system were not things that could be easily dealt with. So, in the contract, the only condition was that, for the person who was going to see the blueprint, that person had to make sure that the information about the blueprint was not revealed, either directly or indirectly. After Johnson read through the contract, he used a small needle that he was carrying in his hand to prickle his finger. After that, he dropped his blood on the contract form, before handing it over back to Jack. Jack did the same. The moment that his blood touched the contract form disintegrated before it divided itself into two. One half of the disintegrated pieces of the armor entered into Johnson, while the other half entered into Jack. With the contract already signed, Jack took out the blueprint that he had been given by the system as a reward during his third monthly income. He handed it over to Johnson. With much less expectations, Johnson took the blueprint. He did not find that the way that the blueprint was presented to be bad, so he did not judge it as of yet. His eyes landed on the drawings and the words that were on the blueprint. Then, his mind suddenly begun buzzing. His eyes widened as disbelief could be seen clearly in them. For a moment, he stumbled, nearly collapsing onto the ground. His actions confused Jack's entire group. That was especially so for Jack. He was a stage 2 superhuman, so he could detect if there was anything wrong in the surroundings. But so far, he had not detected anything that could make Johnson stumble. This, where did you get this? How is this even possible? I cannot understand this. Johnson began speaking incoherently.